Content of this meeting is being sent to a third party.
That's me.
Great.
YouTube.
Just checking.
Okay, we're live.
Okay, good afternoon. We are at the MSAD11 Ad Hoc Committee, Cell Phone Committee meeting, Monday, January 13th. It's 3:09. And we'll start with introductions. If we can start at one end of the room, just your name and your role.
Sarah Sims, principal at Gardner Regional Middle School.
Kristen Bingaman, parent.
Sage Scully, student at Gardner Area High School.
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Megan Carlson, school board.
Your budget student rep.
Beth Brooker, high school social worker and parent.
Jared Dumas, social studies teacher at Gardner Area High School.
Thank you. Pat is out on leave. And Frida is coaching a game, I think.
Yes.
Sports event. So that's where we're at right now. The agenda today is just to quickly reflect on our last meeting, to actually try to develop our survey based on our survey questions and spreadsheet and audience and timeline. And then that's probably what we'll get accomplished today, and set an agenda topic for our next meeting. Hi, that's right. We'll give you a minute up to get yourself settled, and if you wouldn't mind giving that would be great. And you won't really be able to read the survey well, so that's why we have it projected, and I'll make it bigger.
Thank you.
So based on our last meeting and since we've last talked, Sage has sent us the survey tool to gather questions. Some of the groups that were set up have done that, and so we're going to review those today and come to some consensus around what we're trying to ask and then how we're going to ask it and what our timeline is. Has anything come up for you since our last meeting that you want to raise or discuss or reflect upon?
Looks like I have something I can share. So one of our 8th grade teachers did this experiment with his classes on one day where they all laid their phones out and they turned the sound on, and then they tallied every time they had a notification and from different places. But for the 4 different class periods, they averaged in the class of, let's say, 22 kids, about 70 notifications per class that students were receiving on their phones. To get a little heavier
Say
as
that
the
again.
day went on, about
72?
70 notifications per 1 hour block that a class was getting. So that was just the average. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. He said it created a lot of really fantastic dialogue with the students. You know what I mean? About how distracting that was. And even if it was in your pocket and just buzzing and the sound wasn't on, like how distracting is that? And actually several kids were like, I've got to turn the notifications off. Like that was just awful. So it was just really eye-opening. I mean, it was like, he said, several, bang, like all over the place. But he said it was worth it because it was really educational for the kids.
So one thing I would share is that right before winter break, we had a pretty significant bullying incident at the high school that was involving cell phones.
Not to deflect from the seriousness of that, when you say 70 per class, like, is that in 60 minutes there were 70, or like each kid got on average 70?
And for the whole class, about 70.
And this is 8th grade,
And this was 8th grade.
so they're 12 to 13 years old.
And a lot of those notifications are from their peers.
Correct.
But they weren't typing on their phones in class?
They were not responding to them. They were all, apparently had them all laid out on the table, right, like up front. And they turned the sound on, and then there was somebody sitting there, and as it dinged, that person would try to find it and then track it. And then at the end, they actually went, how many does each have? Let's make sure we've got the right number. But yeah, it was around 70 on average per class. So
I'm an eighth grader, so that tracks.
And
we-
the
we've
majority of them were
definitely
social media or from parents.
Any other discussion around that? Just making sure. So, our decision is whether or not, our ultimate decision in this committee is whether or not we want to make a recommendation to the board about, use or access to cell phones during the school day. And our short-term outcome is to, develop a survey for students, one for staff, and one for families, and there may be some overlap. And the short timeline for getting that out to gather feedback about how close we are already to people's desire to change our cell phone practices, and the rationale for why they would or would not want that to change, is my understanding. And we know some of the things are safety concerns and how would we mitigate those concerns, and we talked about that a little bit previously. Some is learning objectives and how that would be addressed through the one-to-one laptop pieces. And then just access. How do I communicate if I can't communicate directly to my child? Which historically, we've had lots of measures in place. We still have a lot of those measures in place, but they're not accessed as frequently. And could we revisit those, like calling the office and leaving a message? Yeah. Or speaking to someone after 2 o'clock, that kind of thing. So ready to dig into the surveys?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need my glasses, and I think I need to make this bigger, so my navigation skills will be interesting on this. We'll do our best together. So we have questions in this column. So Sage set this up. There's questions here in this column. And then this is do these questions work for staff, right? And then the next section is here's questions and do these work for students? And then finally, the next session, here's questions and do they work for parents or family guardians members? And Sage already sets this up. So we had an initial review group, mostly the people putting the questions in. And then we can decide yes or no as a group, and it will automatically determine if it passes as a question on the survey. Make sense? It's brilliant. I didn't have to create it. So should we just go through these together pretty quickly? I think it's our fastest way. Okay, so. And we can deal with the order of operations later, like which questions come first, that kind of thing. Do you support or oppose banning student cell phones during the school day? And then there's a scale, strongly support to strongly oppose. So we're saying yes or no to that question.
Say yes.
Yes.
How often do you observe student cell phone use impacting their focus or learning during class? So this is for staff. Very often to never.
Yes.
Anyone say no?
I'm just wondering, should there be an option for like the staff members that aren't teachers? Like, I don't teach a class or something.
So like not
that.
applicable?
Yeah.
I think like ed tech, support staff, ed techs would have been able
They
to see
they
this.
still address cell phone issues in our building.
Right, and I was gonna say, as somebody who doesn't teach a class, I do still see that, like, I
Okay.
dealt with that today
Okay.
with a student that couldn't be in class because somebody recorded something mean on a phone and sent it to them.
We could also put it so they don't have to answer, it's not mandatory to answer every
Or
question.
delete during class,
I was gonna say, or just say, or learning.
question mark.
And what if we change it to student focus instead of there? Or learning, and then remove that,
Yes.
yes?
Yeah.
Okay, now is it more acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. In your opinion, how significant is the impact of cell phone use on classroom management? Very significant to no impact. It's a scale.
Could there be like a Y option? Like if they.
Yeah, a discussion point.
Yeah, cause I feel like it would be nice to have like more input than just a neutral or like tiny effect or something.
This one feels a little bit more specific to like classroom teachers maybe versus others, but.
I think ed techs who are in classrooms might have a good response, but again, this might be where we say they don't, it's an optional question. And then the branch question could be, in your opinion, how significant is impact? Could you,
And for those of us that are supporting on the outside, if a student is having to leave the classroom to come see us because of it, that's an indication of not being able to manage it in the classroom.
so could you describe why you feel this way? Is that helpful? Okay. So we're good with that? And we'll add a underneath it. What are the most common ways students use their cell phones inappropriately during school? Here are your options. You can pick all that apply. Texting or messaging during class, playing games, accessing social media, cheating on assignments or tests, taking photos or videos without permission, other. From your perspective, what are the most common ways?
Yeah.
Is this information helpful to us?
I think it is. I mean, I think it allows us to see or show that this is what teachers are seeing is happening in the rooms, right?
Like it's
So.
not necessarily productive use.
Correct, right? Like, so I think too, like if we were to decide that we wanted to ban cell phones, that could be some of the data that we provide, right? Teachers are showing us that this is the number one use of their phones in the room, right? And how it's impacting. So it might be information we could use later.
But it doesn't actually tell us that's the number one use. It would tell us,
The number one inappropriate use.
My brain is looking at the word inappropriately. And I wonder if we could ask the question without that word and basically instead of what are the most common ways where they're using their phones, it's like, which of these behaviors have you observed? Something like that.
We can make
Because
it less
then
biased.
What's that?
Just like make it less biased.
Yeah, I mean, the word,
in general.
I mean, granted, those things are inappropriate in school. I think that it's, I just think that I'm stuck on that word a little bit, and usually I'm a words guy, but I can't quite articulate why. But I do think also just which of these have you seen? Instead of which is the most common.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
What about adding in using appropriately for class thing, and then we really could determine
Say
which
which
is the
of the
most common
following,
use,
Angela?
like how often, because it is gonna be an argument that some people are gonna have is that the students are using their phones for class, and so if we have that as an option and just say, what are you seeing?
And that's another question,
And-
it looks like. How
That is-
often are they using it for educational purposes?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Another thing, are we including like all personal devices on this? Because the Apple Watches as well, just the the cheating on assignments or tests, Apple Watches are like the number one method of that. So I don't know if we wanna include that in there.
That's a great point, and I think when we get to the point of talking about what the limits are, it's gonna have to be all smart devices.
Yeah.
Cause if we take away phones, but they still have their watches, it's the exact same thing, you can do all the same
That's what we
stuff.
discussed last time too.
but if we don't frame it out in the survey to be all
Mhm.
smart devices, then
Mhm.
we're gonna have people surprised.
And can they have a cell phone that's not smart?
Yeah, it's rare probably, but I think if this was to pass, we'll probably come up with cell phones that aren't smart showing up more too.
Right, because if it's a parent concern about access to their child, okay, we'll take away social media, but then is the policy gonna include flip phones where they can text
During
parents
class
and
period.
peers or potentially take pictures, I think, and flip phone
Yeah.
takes pictures.
We do have a
Um,
picture issue, but not necessarily in classrooms, but in spaces.
Yeah, I agree. I think making it more broad, like really defining what devices we're talking about is important. so that people are not surprised.
Instead
I
of
thought I
during
was-
class periods, why don't we just say at school? Is there anything,
So when you say
Other
access to
behaviors.
social media, that's very broad. Like, if you go to a knitting website.
do we wanna say like e.g.
your
Snapchat?
Your knitting.
Is that how you spell Snapchat, like
They
that?
would
Yeah.
still be on their device
X.
using it inappropriately, even if that
Right,
was the social media they were accessing.
But what about on their laptop?
Might not have to worry about TikTok in like 2 weeks.
But I feel like, but that's like a different thing, right?
Because we already have a technology director who blocks stuff, it comes up and a policy in place.
It's just I can't block everything.
Correct.
Sorry,
If it's like just at school in general, then shouldn't you add like texting or messaging like like delete the class? Because, or should it be like a whole different option?
because
I
they're
feel
going in the
like-
hallway and texting and messaging.
Yeah, but then that's not
Yeah.
really inappropriate use
It's
though.
not, yeah,
Like it's not really negative if it's like at lunch, I guess, but like in class, it's like,
okay, we put
Just
that
negative.
back. What about, is there a learning, like calculator use?
Yeah.
Is there a learning purpose? I mean, well, these are all negative behaviors,
I was
but
gonna
is
say,
there?
yeah. Question
There's
is farther
another,
down.
yeah, I think
Oh,
there's another
that's what you were
question.
raising,
Yes, that question
sorry.
is farther
Okay.
down.
So how are we feeling about that one? We've adjusted it a little bit more back to the learning environment.
I do think that it's hard to include smartwatches like only in one. Like I think at the top or at the beginning, you'll have to define what you're talking
Right, we're just,
about.
we're referring to cell phones, smartwatches,
Right.
et cetera.
It might be helpful to go through them all just once before we weigh in, so we can see.
Yeah, because it's hard to know what's coming.
Right.
And are you going to let them use their private laptops? Are you going to say?
Right, we got stuck on that one last
Or are you
time.
gonna say only school-owned electronic devices? That would cut all that up.
So I don't wanna get stuck right now, so I'm gonna keep, we're gonna, that, because that one gets us tricky. We are going to have to discuss that, but, okay, so I'll come back to these then. Here's the next one, just so you know. Do you feel cell phones have a positive, neutral, or negative effect on student engagement, peer relationships / social interactions, and classroom behavior and discipline? So those are actually 3 separate questions. Would you support a policy where students can bring cell phones but must store them in lockers or a designated area during the school day? Yes, no, unsure. What challenges do you anticipate in enforcing a cell phone ban? And the options include resistance from students, lack of parental support, increased disciplinary actions, logistical difficulties, other. How do you think a cell phone ban would impact student academic performance, improve, no change, worsen, classroom management, or school climate? Do you believe students should have access to their cell phones in specific scenarios like an emergency? How often do you use student cell phones for educational purposes in your classroom? Do you have any additional comments, concerns, or suggestions about implementing a cell phone ban?
Are we banning them for teachers too? And if so, should we include content on that topic in here? Because I feel like if we're allowing teachers to use them inappropriate in the classroom, that would be a double standard.
And we already have a.
We do have a policy.
right, in place.
is this gonna be sent out to like all of the school staffs in like the whole district or just the high school?
Middle and high school.
Okay. Should it be put on there, like if the person is like from the middle school or high school on kind of?
Yeah, I definitely think we need one to identify grade levels.
Or we could just separate.
Because we also have different policies right now between the 2 buildings.
It would be great to have it also be role. Are you a teacher? Are you a support person, et cetera?
would the adult ed teachers be included in this?
No.
Okay.
Because they operate under different policies,
Okay.
unless we wanted to ask them, I don't know. Did I miss anyone? Teacher, ed tech, specialist, mental health, nurse? Okay. So we'll go back up here. From your perspective, which of the following, sorry, it's because I edited. Behaviors are observed routinely when students are using their cell phones or smartwatches in class, and we have our list. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Do you feel cell phones have a positive, neutral, or negative effect? And then it's 3 sections: student engagement, relationships, and classroom behavior. Those would really end up being 3 questions, I think, unless we can chart them.
Good.
Yeah, good, okay,
Yeah,
I couldn't
yeah.
put here. Would you support a policy where students can bring cell phones and smartwatches, but must store them in lockers or designated area during the school day?
I don't know about this one because that's kind of already giving them like a solution that we haven't necessarily decided on. And I think that maybe the question after that, what challenges do you anticipate in enforcing a cell phone ban? I think is what that first question is trying to ask.
Yeah, we don't actually have our strategy yet. I think that's we're trying to figure out how far apart we are from people's perception of this working to then deciding which strategy is going to be the one that we want to lean into, I think.
Yeah, the other two, the student and parent just say, do you support a cell phone ban? Yes, no, or unsure, versus giving a potential solution and asking if they support. I mean, so you could just ask more generally.
Do we have?
We have the first question, do you support
Oh, yeah.
or oppose banning cell phones?
Oh,
yeah.
So we already
question
have
1,
that.
so we can say no to this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so then what challenges do you anticipate in enforcing a cell phone ban? And there's a bunch of options.
But that doesn't get
Resistance,
into any
parental.
specifics.
Yeah.
Right, so that's okay, and they can pick any option they think would be any options. How do
You
you,
wanna clarify on that one though, Angela, that like in anticipate enforcing something, if that were to happen, do we want, because we don't want them to think we've made a decision? Should we put a little parentheses that says, if that were the direction the committee goes?
if
Does that make sense? Otherwise,
the
the
board
wording will be read
opts to
into, I worry,
move
if we
in
don't
this
kind of
direction.
identify, like, we're just trying to get a field. Yeah,
in the future?
yes. That way nobody reads into we've made a decision, yeah.
Believe me, the more explicit, the better.
But I'm
But
just,
it's
yep,
still
just
bad.
anticipating experience.
How do you think the ban would impact student performance, classroom management, school climate? That will get you a lot of perceptions on improve, no change, or worsen. And do you believe students should have access to their cell phones and smartwatches? I just haven't added that yet.
Tricky
In specific scenarios.
Who's gonna define an emergency? Like, what if it's a snow day? What if it's like?
I think they could add that in their narrative at the bottom. They're going to say what they feel, something is off. I want to be able to contact my kid if the school is in crisis.
Remember,
We
this is
have learned
staff
from
survey,
other
we're on
apps.
staff survey.
Oh, yeah, this is staff. Well, that'll be interesting because we have had a couple scenarios in our building where students have had their cell phones. I would be curious what the staff's perspective is, but maybe they say it at the bottom. We haven't asked our own law enforcement community yet about this. We saw information from other communities where cell phone bans have gone into place that law enforcement has written specific letters saying it's actually very hard for us to manage a scene when all the kids are on their cell phones and parents are getting a lot of mixed messages, even when the school has responded quickly to the communication. We have had that same situation ourselves, but we, just to be clear, have not asked our own law enforcement communities, the state police, the sheriff's office, or the Gardner police about this question. But we have seen that represented in other communities.
So if, for example, cell phones were in lockers or cases, this question would be suggesting that in the event that someone deems it an emergency, all of those would be released into people's hands.
Well, and I have to say that in the case of emergency, the last,
Then
you know,
you're
when
gonna-
when I Alice trained staff in this district, right? Like, one of the first things we say is you leave it all behind. You don't care about your cell phone. You don't care about your backpack. You don't care about the car keys. Like, you leave it and you focus
Your
on
go
safety.
bag,
Right, well,
your
right,
go
but I'm
bag
telling you,
and
but
your
you could be
radio.
locking down though, Angela, but like what I'm saying is, what if you're deciding to like barricade in, right,
Right.
instead of leaving the building? So now you've got two different issues going on. We don't want kids, if there's a fire, to all wanna go back to a homeroom to get their cell phones, right? That's an emergency. Or if we're in some sort of even higher emergency, right? We don't want people worried about how do I get to my homeroom? We want them to enact our ALIS safety. So I would say taking this off. I don't think that should be on the
It
seems
table.
tricky.
I think
Yeah, I think it's very tricky.
the situation has to be discussed in terms of policies and procedures if a ban was to be put in place. And it would need to be listed ahead of time in the handbook or the policy so that we were clear what the strategy was.
If
I'm
we-
not sure gaining staff perspective. is
Yeah, I just
helpful.
don't know that the question itself will help us with that.
Okay. I was just thinking like if we do wanna get a general feel on what their thoughts are for cell phone access during emergency situations, we could ask like an open-ended question. If we wanted to.
Ask what kind of question?
Something like, in the event of an emergency, do you think it would be beneficial for students to have access to their cell phones? Or just leave it alone?
And this is to the staff.
Because if they all say no, that could just be something else that helps with our data, like, cause that argument point would be brought up. And then we could say, if we did choose to do a cell phone ban, we could say like 70% or whatever of staff members thought that it would not be beneficial for students to have access to their cell phones during emergency situations.
I
think we should leave it out.
the only thing I'm concerned about that, Sage, is I would really want that perspective from those that are handling the crisis situation.
Yeah,
And I don't, if families are uncomfortable with that, I don't want it to come back on the staff. I want it to be like, this
That
was a
makes sense.
decision of leadership, the board, and the law enforcement community as to what is the protocol that's the most efficient to ensure the safety of our kids.
Yeah.
Students, sorry. And I recognize the value of having a perspective, but I wouldn't want it to be the thing that we lean on as a decision maker. I think the emergency part's the part that makes me nervous. How often do you use student cell phones for educational purposes in your classroom? So again, that would have to be dependent upon the role, so they would have to be able to opt out of that question. Or we can just write not applicable. So thoughts, yes or no?
I think, yeah.
Okay, and then this was the open, we just decided we did want an open-ended, right, in a couple of spots, so we would have an open-ended. Do you have anything else to add? Okay, we good on staff? Any question missing? Okay. Let's try students. This is 6 through 12, grades 6 through 12. Do you think, want me to read them through?
Yeah, and same caveat, I would assume would apply around other.
Yes,
smartwatches
other,
and technology.
will be universal, I'm just not gonna edit it right now. Smart tools, cell phones, smartwatches. I don't know if there's anything else, smart glasses, whatever. I don't think our kids have them, but they exist. Do you think cell phones should be banned during the school day? How important is it to you to have access to your phone during school hours? How often do you use your phone during the school day for non-academic purposes like texting, social media, and games? What do you use your phone for during the school day? Is that the same question?
Kind of.
We'll come back to that then. What challenges do you think students might face if cell phones are banned? What benefits do you think a cell phone ban could bring? There are choices, better focus, fewer distractions, less drama, and cyberbullying, so improve social interactions. Do you think students should be allowed to use their phones during specific times like lunch or breaks? If cell phone ban is enforced, where do you think phones should be kept? So that goes back to that same question we had kind of on the staff end. Do you feel comfortable relying on school communication systems like the office or teacher to contact your family in emergencies instead of using your phone? Ooh. If you had to suggest a compromise regarding cell phone use at school, what would it be? So that's the open-ended one.
One thing I wanna note is that, if you see on the boxes a little triangle in the corner of if you scroll up, like that one right there has a little triangle in the
Oh,
corner.
here it
Those
is.
are comments that people might have left
Oh, we should look.
about it.
Okay, so when we get
Yeah.
to that, we'll look. Thank
Yeah,
you for
that's
nailing
just so-
that. I
I wanna make
didn't
sure we
even
don't
notice
miss
it.
those.
Okay, you ready? Do you think cell phones should be banned during the school day? Yes, no, not sure for students.
Yeah, sure.
How important is it to you to have access to your phone during school hours? Very to not important at all. And I guess if you disagree, say something. How often do you use your phone during the school day for non-academic purposes like texting, social media, and games? Constantly to never.
I would suggest that we break this into a smaller period of time because I think that people will underestimate how often they use it across the course of the day.
So that gets sort of like, how do you use your cell phone, which is further
No, it's right there.
this one.
Yeah, if we go back to that question, I think that maybe we should have, another option between constantly and a few times a day, because I feel like that's a large jump.
And for the high school, it wouldn't be inappropriate to be using it occasionally, right? Because you have access to it during.
Yeah,
Whereas the middle school, if they're using it at all, that's technically against policy, right? So it gets a little.
I think it should be like an option of like a few times a class or like, cause it'll help.
Because we technically have the same policy, we're just enforcing it differently.
So keep the question, but change the scale a little.
yeah.
Instead of each a class period. A few times a day, occasionally, rarely, never.
Yeah, I feel like the few times a class period is gonna be most popular with high school students. And I think that helps them conceptualize like how much they actually do use it a day.
Also, if we added a few times a day, do you really think, do we still need occasionally? I mean. A few times a day is.
Yeah, wouldn't a few
Do
times
you know
a
what I
day
mean?
count?
I feel like a few times a day is much more direct than occasionally, right? It's not open to interpretation.
Makes it easier.
I just don't
because
think we need
5
that
points
one.
is actually easier than 6.
Yeah, I just don't think
to
we need
write
that
it.
one if we use a few times a day.
What about only on breaks or lunch or whatever?
That's another question down.
I think we could have as a separate question. So let's look and see if it's suggests it's there. What do you use your phone for during the school day? Communicating with friends or family, checking social media, that's that same question. That we put in EG for. I don't even know what kids use these days anymore, guys. I have all the apps for my kid, but I don't know if they're all up to date.
You should include Instagram over
Oh,
X.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Do I spell it out instead or just say Insta?
Instagram is good.
And then what was the other one I had?
X,
No, not
TikTok.
X.
no X.
TikTok.
Nobody's using X.
But we don't know if
Not
that's gonna
the
be.
Teenagers usually.
That's like old school.
A little bit.
Guess we're not
It's
putting
not that many
Facebook
people.
down.
I only use
Sage.
Discord for like
Nobody's using Facebook and.
Playing games, using educational apps or tools, listening to music, other. Yes or no to this question? So it's just like what they're using it for?
Yes.
What challenges do you think students might face if cell phones are banned? Not being able to contact family during the day, difficulty using helpful tools like calculators or research apps, feeling disconnected from friends, increased stress or anxiety, other.
Maybe we should add like a planning thing, cause
Scheduling.
yeah.
Honestly,
Like
this is-
accessing your like power school schedule, or are you thinking more like
No,
your
like-
daily schedule?
I find myself scheduling my day at like noon.
Yeah.
Calendar stuff.
Yeah, and like texting my mom like, hey, does this work? Am I busy tonight? Like, am I-
So that's like
That's
contacting your
middle school,
family.
still
Yeah, or like
those
friends
planners.
too, if it's like a weekend.
And then disconnected from
No,
friends,
we
calendar,
teaching
setting.
How to use
meetups.
like
What do you call that?
Calendar. Do you know what I mean? An actual tool that they can
Confirming-
access without having.
confirming
But
plans.
still access on their phone
Plans.
at home. But where they can use this, we've been trying to teach them more
Well, if we do
updated
receive-
ways.
Yeah, if we do receive like kind of, I don't know, any criticism, I think bringing the planners back would be a really great idea because when I was in. Oh,
I think
yeah,
we
I
need to
bet.
take tools.
I
out.
bet.
And we
Yeah.
still
But I
have, we
will-
still bring in a
About
certain amount for
difficulty-
people, but usually, but
I think
again,
just
we can
need to
always
do
add those.
scheduling.
Finalizing plans
For parents,
Yeah,
like pick
when
up
I
a
was in
planner, your
middle
kids
school.
might like a different one,
and scheduling.
I actually got my homework.
Scheduling and finalizing.
yeah.
Scheduling plans.
Yours gonna be handed.
Is that broad enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
Process
Like
this,
confirming
this,
plans, like
And then come and have it,
in upstairs ceiling bathroom.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, so that's a little more,
You can probably get rid of confirming plans if the question is difficulty scheduling plans.
oh, right, thank you. We'll just take out all that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What benefits do you think a cell phone ban could bring? Better focus in class, fewer distractions for students and teachers, less drama or cyberbullying, improved social interactions face to face.
Oh, yeah, the little
Okay.
triangle.
Oh, sorry.
It's a little note.
Remove all entries and let them enter their responses. I don't know, I kind of feel like if I was taking the survey, I would rather check some boxes and then if I feel really passionately, I'm gonna write why later.
Well, there's
There's
another
an
section
other-
right there
yeah,
too, so
a
that they
piece
can add it right on.
specified.
If I don't have
Having
check
some
boxes, I
choice.
might just whip through the survey and not really answer.
Would we wanna measure apples
Something.
to apples?
So how do we feel? Yes or no?
I think it's good answers.
It would make the question almost unusable if it was open-ended because you'd have so many different responses. that,
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to make it quantitative, it's just impossible.
Do you think students should be allowed to use their phones during specific times like lunch or breaks? Always, only during lunch or breaks, not at all during the school
I
day?
think we should get rid of the yes always and just
Right.
make this a
Yes
yes
or
or
no.
no. So that's kind of contradicting itself.
You wanna split that up by grade level?
Maybe.
Middle school, high school?
No.
We'll have that, we'll be able to, if they write their middle school, we can disaggregate it by middle school answers.
No, I mean, I don't think there's any reason why that's not, I can pretty much tell you what I think they're gonna answer.
Another thing that might be more useful than having them check if they're middle school or high school is to just like copy and paste the same form and send it to the middle school and then to the high school. And that way you just have two separate forms with the responses already separated.
Yeah, we could do that, name it middle school, name
Yeah.
it high school.
That way
Yep,
we're collecting the data,
Yeah.
not having to separate it all
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
later.
that would
That's
be,
true too.
we could, that's easier. So we're good with this question or not?
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, should we do like grade level for high school? Because our like, what we decide might be like more lenient towards like the seniors and junior, like upperclassmen. I don't know, but like I think it's a possibility.
Is there a layer in there in questions for like junior, senior privileges with their stuff? I don't know, if that's a thought
I
or.
think that'd be nice to have, because if you're like an honors kid and you're doing well in school,
Then you're gonna have classrooms that can use cell phones and classrooms that can't.
I
wonder
mean, like
if
if
we
you're like
could-
wandering the halls
Oh,
kind
oh,
of.
oh,
I wonder if it could be like during your study hall.
That's
if
what I
you
was
have
thinking,
honors
is there like a layer there for
privileges,
question that
like,
might be
kind of like the
beneficial?
gold card situation maybe.
Well, and I think, I hear what you're saying here as far as like, you know, juniors and seniors as you're approaching adulthood,
Yeah.
getting ready to move on to the adult world, one of the things that they're gonna need to know is how to manage their own cell phone usage. And if it's just a flat out ban, we're not giving that opportunity for them to learn that skill.
Yeah.
So they're, maybe having some flexibility around that for our juniors and seniors might be really beneficial for them.
Okay, so let's come back to that, and because I think it's a separate question.
Yeah.
If a cell phone ban is enforced, where do you think phones should be kept? So this is that strategy question we said no to on the other chart. Do we feel the same on this chart?
I think so.
I have a feeling they would say if it had to happen, it would be with the student or collected by teachers, because then they're going to rely on whether or not it's consistently applied, which is how we're doing things now. And then we're leaning into something that we don't know if we want that to be the strategy or not yet.
Yeah, I don't think we should indicate at all any sort of strategy that we would be thinking about.
Because we just don't know yet.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable relying on school communication systems to contact your family in emergencies instead of using your phone? So that's an interesting question. And the question is comfort. Right now, there's no need to use the school system. And so you wouldn't be comfortable with it because you haven't used it. Many people haven't used it.
What about changing the question to, are you aware that the school has a system in which to allow that? Like, focusing on the awareness versus the comfort.
Maybe it's like listing them out, like, are you aware that you have access to a phone in the office to call home? That parents can leave notes in the office for you, you know what I mean? Maybe it's more of like that.
Like if it's a lockdown situation, you don't want students focused on trying to get to the office to call their parent or whatever, because that would just like
Well,
create.
yeah, this way we can go around.
Do students really not assume that the school doesn't, do you not?
Nobody.
I mean, we get
No one
messages.
uses it anymore unless it's
I mean, they do
calling
it.
a kid out.
I think it would be nice if we put like, are you open to relying on school communication systems? Cause like no one's gonna be comfortable at first, but like some people like might be open to like learning.
I mean, we have parents who at the middle school call and leave messages for us to transfer to kids. And then we have parents who text. It depends. A
Yeah.
lot of our sixth graders don't necessarily all have phones. We usually see them get them between sixth and seventh grade, the majority of them.
So
So like more of our younger kids' parents call versus our older kids, they
And
just
some
start
8th grade
texting.
parents.
They just
yeah, I
start
think it
texting.
depends on the family and what they're.
Yes, and again, it does, right? It really depends.
And what
But
they're
people do
comfortable
call,
with,
they
what's
leave
quick.
messages.
But
We
in
call
an
them down at certain times of the
emergency-
day and give them to them.
But in an emergency situation at the school, like if there's a lockdown, that message goes out to every
Yeah.
parent.
Yeah, but then the
They're
parents
not
text the kid.
They're texting kids. So here's my only. So people say they're not comfortable, are we going to not do anything?
I don't think we should ask it.
Right. I don't
And
think
so that's
we
part of
think
getting the
comfort's right.
feedback, right, is we should only be asking things that we're actually going to use that data to truly inform. If they're not comfortable and we still do it, it's our responsibility anyway, under any circumstances, comfortable or not, to make sure we're super clear about the procedures. We are good at following through with those procedures. And you only develop comfort when you've used something routinely. So
I
I'm a
like
little
the idea of
concerned.
saying like identify the communication strategies you are aware exist
Right, maybe list them out.
outside of using a cell phone.
I kind of feel like we already know that we can call our parents or like from the school, but it's like whether or not like we would be open to doing it.
Honestly, I think it might be more useful to put that communications question on the parents' end, because I don't know if a lot of parents are aware that they can actually leave messages for their kids. I think kids know that they can like go to the office if they wanna call their parents or something. But I don't know if necessarily parents are aware.
Will kids be open to going to the office? Cause I feel like I feel like most people, I don't know. I feel like it's
Well,
not a
you can
fault.
actually call out from a teacher's phone.
From any phone, right? I was gonna say, the majority of our
You
kids
have
don't even come to
Your
the
favorite
office, they call
teacher,
from the
you
teacher's
can
phone
call
in the
out
room.
from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That way they don't even have to leave the room. Yeah, right there, press 8, your number.
I just had another thought that I think is kind of connected to this, and I don't know if we wanna ask a question or how we would phrase it. But I know one of the things that we've been talking about with the surveys and all of that is the disconnect that the community feels from the school, and that includes parents. One of the things that we're often hearing from parents is wanting to be more involved in the school. And I'm wondering how much of students contacting their parents directly and removing the school from that communication has contributed to that feeling of the school and families being disconnected. So if we did take that out so that students aren't communicating directly to their parents from school and that the school is actually reaching out and doing that connection, would that actually improve relationships between families and schools?
Theory of action right there. Okay, I'm aware of the time and I don't want us to go over, so I think that we can entertain this question, but maybe word it differently. So for now, I'm gonna write no, and then let's look at the student side and come back if we
We
need
also like
to.
highlight it or something.
Yeah, we can do that. We can highlight it as we have to come back to the, okay, if you had to suggest a compromise regarding cell phone use at school, what would it be? Not do it is what I'm anticipating an answer. The first group said no.
Don't we also want to avoid open-ended questions if you want?
I think we wanna give some opportunity. What did we ask
Okay.
over here? We said, how,
I think it was like additional
Yeah.
input or something.
define cell phone ban to include smartwatches. Oh yeah, we did that. Do you have any additional comments, concerns, or suggestions about implementing a cell phone ban? I think it's respectful to ask the students the same question
I agree.
rather than frame it differently. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll copy this question and put it here. And then we'll say yes to this one, but no to that one. And then this is Kira's thought about grade level, and Sage's thought about making sure we just do one per building, so we don't have to then sort through. Okay? All right, do you think we can whip through the parent survey just to at least so we could get a draft out for our team?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, here I'm gonna read them fast. Do you support or oppose banning cell phones during the school day? How important do you think it is for students to have access to their cell phones during the school hours? What are your main concerns about banning cell phones at school? Emergency communication, lack of access to tools, my child feeling disconnected, other. What potential benefits do you see if cell phones were banned during the school day? Same as the students, the same options. In the event of an emergency, that's that
I don't think
comfort.
it was the same options.
Oh, it wasn't?
Less
Improve
exposure to inappropriate
focus,
content.
reduce social distractions, less exposure to oh, that's a new one. Decrease bullying or social pressure. Slightly different words. We can come back to that. In the event of an emergency, how comfortable are you relying on the school's communication system to reach your child? I'd like to discuss that. How frequently do you expect your child to need their cell phone for emergencies during school hours? Would you support a policy where students can bring cell phones but are required to store them in lockers or designated areas during the school day? What grade levels is your child? We are only targeting middle school and high school, I believe, right? So we need to talk about that. What are your biggest concerns regarding a cell phone ban?
Just make it the same.
Same question that we used all the way along.
I think the top question should be the same in all three as well.
Do you think should
support
be
or
banned?
oppose? Like there, it just is
Yeah.
worded differently with different answers
Oh, yeah,
each time.
it is. Sorry. I'm just going to copy it for now into that so that that can be attended to. Okay. So, do you support or oppose banning cell phones during the school day? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
How important do you think it is for students to have access to their cell phones during school day? And it would be vary to not vary.
Yeah.
What are your main concerns about banning cell phones? Okay. Emergency communication with my child, lack of access to helpful tools like calculators and internet, my child feeling disconnected.
Yeah.
Other.
I think you could delete the internet part, cause we have the internet on school laptops.
Yeah, and on your laptops, right?
And there's a difference between really emergency communication and like planning pickup or whatever.
It's defining emergency is, because there's another emergency question.
So
and I
then what if
agree.
we went down here like,
What about easy access to communication with my child?
efficient? Or is easy a better word for
It's
generally?
simpler, it's good.
Easy access to communicating to scheduling, easy access to lack of easy access to schedule and plan with my child during the school day. Lack of access to helpful tools, my child feels disconnected.
I think we could delete the calculator part too.
Just this in general.
Yeah. Or maybe you could just delete that whole helpful tools part.
Thank you. Those are probably, those are emergencies, scheduling, disconnected.
I don't know, with the tools thing, I mean, we ask it with other ones around.
And we do have a lot of students who have IEPs and 504s that have like access to music, and that we're gonna get that as a tool that is
You could just
utilized.
say it the same way though, access to educational apps or tools.
Maybe that
That's how
should-
you put it in
And
the
maybe
other.
that too should be a caveat where at the beginning we discuss, like, this is what we're looking for, this is what we define. Maybe we should put a disclaimer in there that this does not apply to access to specific things as based in IEPs or 504s. That way people right off the bat go, oh, okay.
Definition of terms kind of thing at the beginning.
Right, that way we just completely take that off.
Is
and say,
it
"Whoa, that's
My
what
child
it
feeling
means to my kid."
disconnected or me feeling disconnected
I
from
was
my
just gonna
child?
say that.
Uh-huh.
The answer here is
Could be
yes.
both.
Yeah, could be both, yeah. I don't know that I would consider music as an example of an educational app or tool.
So just leave it
I would just leave it,
undefined,
yeah.
like Kira keeps reminding me I should probably do. Got it. Okay, so we're okay with this, some options with other there. Okay, what potential benefits do you see if cell phones were banned during the school day? Improved focus and academic performance, reduced, is it two separate things? Reduced social distractions, less exposure to inappropriate content, decreased bullying or social pressure. Any thoughts?
I would separate out improved focus and academic performance. I would say like increased academic.
Focus and then increased academic performance separately.
Yeah, improved and then increased.
Oh, yeah, got it.
I lost it though, sorry folks. Where'd it go?
Back button to the top.
Improved focused, increased academic performance, reduced, less, decreased. Okay, so yes.
Yes.
Emergency, this is the same question we just said no to in the
And
student
I say,
side.
let's say no to, let's be
Yeah.
consistent.
And did you highlight it to reword
We did talk
it?
about maybe coming back with, again, we're just trying to make a draft, right? So definitely I think there's a layer in there of.
How frequently do you expect your child to need their cell phone for emergencies during school hours? Daily, weekly, monthly, rarely, never?
I didn't really understand this question.
I'd get rid of it.
Yeah,
just
If they feel like it's a big deal, they can add it.
Than the other.
Or is it more of like daily communication instead of emergencies?
Which is another question.
What would you support a policy where students can bring cell phones but are required to store them in lockers or
It should
designated
not
areas?
indicate any sort of.
And we said no to the strategy, okay. What grade levels is your child in school? We are only targeting middle school and high school, correct? So even if you have children in the other grade levels, that's not what this survey is for, not who this survey is for.
Is that
This
because
one
we
says-
assume that kids shouldn't have them in?
We already have a ban on them in K5. They're supposed to be in their bags or in their away at all times. Not out even during lunch and recess. They do have them. They're already put away supposedly. I don't know that that's. Here's my thought on it. We add pre-K to 5, we have to start adding all kinds of other things about pre-K to 5. And right now the committee was really looking at middle school and high school strategies and then.
And so I think this is a good start, and then if we find that we need to extend it to the elementary schools, I think we could do that later.
Because we know the majority of our 6-12
Right.
have some sort of cell phone or smartwatch.
These next two questions, well, that's just the smartwatch thing. We have leaned on the last question instead of the question above it on all the other surveys.
Yes.
Okay,
Could we
Yeah.
look at, could you But like, for the what potential benefits do you see, could you do like, increase like social, skills?
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, instead of reduce social distraction, maybe increase social.
Interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
And, yeah, improve social skills.
Yeah, right, interpersonal communicating.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
Do you have something different you wanna say?
Maybe you could take off the face to, I don't know.
That's fine.
I liked what you said.
How about in-person
Improved,
social
improved
skills?
social skills.
How about in person?
Interpersonal.
That's the word.
Ah,
And I do think improved is better than increased.
Yeah,
sorry. You probably said that. Better? Okay, smart.
Social, I don't think we need interpersonal and social, do we?
Yeah. One or the other.
Some parents, well, all parents don't interpersonal.
I was getting ready to say
How
the same thing.
about that?
I mean, I was getting ready to say the same thing. I think it's valid, or we need to put a little caveat, like this is kind of like social skills at the end.
Right.
Because I agree.
Everybody knows what social skills means.
Yeah.
Correct, right, like interpersonal, right, like that's education talk.
Yes.
Could we add the less exposure to inappropriate content to the student one?
You can.
Yeah, cause sometimes I'd be getting airdropped some things that I don't wanna
Oh,
see.
God.
Yeah.
That's, sorry, I shouldn't use that word, but that,
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
Cause you just can't make up some of this, stuff. You just have no idea.
Our nurse has
Can't
like
make
one
it
of
up.
those Google Home speakers, and sometimes students will like get onto her Bluetooth and start playing really inappropriate music.
Oh my gosh,
We'll
or
just be
like,
sitting there and this crazy song comes on. I'm like,
or like speakers on like sports bus rides, like kids will just go too far, or like, just like, or like in group chats, people will like to send bad things in there that no one wants to see.
I added it.
Thank
Thank you for the
Yes.
suggestion. Okay, so we have a draft now for each of our surveys. We need to establish a timeline and call it quits so that we can go work on our draft. Our next meeting, we meet the second Monday of the month. So the question is,
Can we go back to the student survey where we had the one that was, how often do you use your phone during the school day for non-academic purposes?
yep,
So if you were using it, I mean, the way that this is written, you could use it during lunchtime when it would be completely appropriate to use it for a non-academic purpose, but it wouldn't be captured correctly.
what if we did it more spelled out? Cause I don't think that there's many students that would say constantly, even though we all know that there are.
In
What if we
class?
said like per class, like 5 to 10 times per class period, or like 10 or more times per class period, or like, but gave specific numbers and it was per class period.
I
So-
like that.
Or
Could I
only
add-
at lunch or break.
I add in class here and then more than 10 times per period. In a period,
And then I think,
class period.
never mind, it was already in there. I like that.
Well, I wonder if we just keep
Yeah,
it focused on the class period,
This
because
works
this question
really-
is focused
Yeah,
on,
well,
is it, do we want it focused on the entire school day or just
class.
class periods?
So that one, could we make that like less than once per period, like once or less per period?
There's like this huge gap between 10 and a few.
Yep.
Help me out, students.
5 to 10 times,
Oh,
6 to 10.
cause there's something about being half, right? 3 to 5 times.
One to two.
I was gonna say, you have 2 in there, cause
And
I
I'd
don't
like,
wanna leave them out.
and you had a great suggestion of, or put it in there only, I mean, or do we not want to put it in there only
Well, there's
during
another
lunch and passing?
question.
Yeah,
Well, this, now that it defines it as in class, that's what I care about is
Right.
you could use non-academic purposes at lunch and that's fine.
I think they're like, well, these won't be anonymous, will they? Cause some students might not answer stuff if they think that they might get in trouble or like that.
I think
So you
they
want
are
them
anonymous.
anonymous? Right, so that
Yeah, I
they'll
think we
answer,
decided
yeah,
on
we should
that.
make them anonymous.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, but
I
I
would
think
agree with that,
also put it
yes.
at the top that it is anonymous,
Okay.
cause
let's
I
put
know
in
that
our
deters a
notes.
lot of students.
And then here, anonymous. And state this at the beginning. These are my little notes, not questions. Okay, so we're gonna draft a survey. So here's the question. Do you want these surveys drafted and ready for review on the second Monday of February? Or do you want them sent, assuming that the people will do the due diligence and we send them out? We work with administrators and such to send them out and have results by the second Monday in February.
Let's have results. And can I add one more thing? Sorry. For the student one, you know, one of the things we think about is like how distracting it is if they're actually picking it up or whatever, but the distraction is really ahead of that. It's when they get a notification or when they're thinking about using the phone. And so can we have a question that goes to that? Because I mean, that's part of what we need to be thinking about when thinking about what our response would be, because putting it in your bag with an off is not sufficient.
How often do you think
To-
about your phone?
Yeah, how
Yeah.
distracted are you by your
During
phone?
class,
Yeah.
even when you, yeah. I mean, somewhere in there, a question, how often are you thinking about your phone?
How often are you thinking about it? How often are you tempted to use your phone or check your phone?
And we
or-
didn't put in any questions about earbuds, but I can tell you that we see it all the time where kids try to keep their earbuds in and put their hair over top of them, but they keep their phone in their backpack. But it's on so that they can see it and then they can tap their smartwatch to see. It's very complex. See, you know exactly what I'm describing. You see, it's legit. It is what it is. Yeah. They were
Something
very,
like that.
very clever.
Then we could do the same frequency that we just did up above.
Yep.
Frequency.
Also, could we ask them, do you have, select the devices that you have and use in school?
And
Yeah.
like, maybe like put in like your most common used, like. well, not
Select
common
the
used, but-
devices you use most often during class periods.
Can you
Cell phone,
rank on Google
smartwatch.
Forms?
I don't know, I can check.
What was the question?
Like,
Rank?
We're looking
Yeah,
for
you could-
personal devices, right? Not
Yeah.
school devices, so I
Yeah,
think
I
we wanna
think-
specify
I think
personal
I think there's a
devices.
way to do it.
And
Yeah,
I'd love
there
to
is,
see a
there's a
question
scale
around
you can use.
accessibility. Do you know, or like, I don't know, I guess it might be covered a little bit, but like, I think about note-taking purposes perhaps, but also like, there can be translate and, you know, all
So
sorts
we
of
have
different
all of
things,
that on the
so.
school computers, and we're not saying we're gonna ban school computers, so we're not taking any of that away from them. And I'm worried about how long the survey is. If it gets too long, the students are going to be less likely to answer effectively. We have learned.
We do have some students that are using like some health apps
Yeah,
that they need.
Well,
And- or
and
to
because
their
that falls
IEP.
under that 504
we would
IEP,
definitely need
right?
to come up with a
So
plan to
we
make
have-
sure they
Oh, we
had
know who
those,
those
don't you
are.
think?
Right, we have 4
Yeah.
diabetics that
Yeah,
all
you're-
have their blood sugars
And I
on
think you'll
us,
see the
so.
request for 504s increase, but that's a whole nother issue. Cause that's.
So that came up in, remember in RSU1 where they said you could not put access to cell phone in your IEP for anxiety purposes. They actually said no to that. So that's gonna be up to discussion, but I'm not sure that's what we want to survey on
We
right
also
now.
add earbuds.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I don't know about the right
No.
question, so I put it
And
in there.
AirPods, it's not earbuds, it's the AirPods.
How about,
Yeah, cause AirPods, some kids use them their full battery life every single day.
Like, there's kids that genuinely just walk around with their AirPods in and they never take them out. Like, if they
how can
want,
they focus?
they pause the music, but they never take their
Well, they
AirPods
just- or-
actually out.
Some
Oh.
people
There's
say
a
that music helps.
Transparency mode?
Yeah, so like, or conversation awareness, so when nobody's speaking or you're not speaking to somebody, it's completely noise canceling, but then when you begin to speak to somebody or somebody begins to speak to you, then you can hear.
Or you just have one in and then
Yeah.
people will listen to music.
But it is
while-
other brands, not just Apple.
That's why I wrote earbuds, but
Smart. earbuds have.
AirPods, is it AirPods?
Well, that's Apple's version, but there's other versions.
Yeah, the kids get the idea.
Yeah.
Cause
Yeah,
some of
just
them use the
flash.
big headphone things too.
Yeah, yeah, but
Not
Yeah.
much, right?
no, and those are good to have in like gym class too, though. That's the only thing I think about like when banning like.
I think that's where we'll
earbuds.
get some feedback from some specific teachers. Like on the treadmill, so great.
Yeah.
Lifting. Okay, we're gonna do the best we can. We're gonna get the surveys out. We're going to have a meeting the second Monday of February, which will be the 10th. February 10th from 3 to 4.
For the parent survey, do we pair? So I have a child in middle school, I have one in high school. How many times am I filling out the survey?
I think we only send one, to me, I think we should only send one parent survey,
Click high school.
and they could
middle
click
school.
either or both. And that way, when I'm looking at the data, I can pull out then, you know what I mean, the high school stuff and be like, put that to the side.
Find
That-
it, hang
That would
on.
be how I would do it.
One survey
'Cause otherwise,
per
like you said-
household.
Yeah, if it's even
Click.
just to check all that apply, cause then it'll sort.
Right, I can literally go up and filter, just show me middle school kids, you know, parents, so. Cause I have 2 kids in elementary and 1 in middle and 1 in
Good
high school right
question.
now, and whew,
And we'll
so
have
it's-
some sort of preamble like we discussed at the last meeting, where we'll have some, if you wanna learn a little bit more about X and research on this, here's some links.
Did
and-
anyone check out, there was a recent news article on a school that did it in Maine, and it was just last week that it was on the TV. I sound like my parents now. It was on the TV. But there was one about the experience, and it was really positive feedback too.
Oh.
So we might want
If,
link to
if
it.
you happen to
I
remember
can
where you
find
got
it.
that and send it along, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, how do you feel? We did it.
Super accomplished.
15 minutes late though, but we're getting there. Thank you for your time. We'll reconvene on the 10th. I'll try to write these up, get this posted.
You learn a lot tonight, Barry?